When you stop talking to a woman, something powerful begins to happen, even if it doesn't show right away. At first, she might shrug her shoulders, act indifferent, or even tell herself that it doesn't matter. She might appear calm, confident, even amused that you've gone quiet. But beneath the surface, curiosity begins to take root. This curiosity doesn't show itself immediately, but it grows stronger with each passing day. Because the truth is, when you suddenly stop giving her your words, your attention, and your energy, you create a silence that speaks louder than anything you could say. In that silence, her mind begins to wander. She starts to wonder where you are, what you're doing, and most importantly, why you are no longer reaching out to her. She may scroll through her phone and realize that the notifications she was used to seeing from you are no longer there. And as much as she tries to ignore it, that absence nags at her. It gnaws at the edges of her thoughts. When she's lying in bed at night, or when she sees something during the day that reminds her of you, she won't admit it at first, but your silence has already created space in her mind. Curiosity is a powerful force because it turns attention inward. Instead of focusing on what you used to say or do, she starts focusing on her own feelings. Why is she thinking about you more now that you've gone silent? Why does she suddenly feel the urge to check your social media, to see if you're online, or to casually ask mutual friends how you're doing? It's because silence removes certainty. When you were always available, she never had to wonder. She knew she could reach you. She knew your energy was there for her. But when you stopped talking, you took away that safety net. And people crave what they can't immediately have. Now her curiosity begins to spiral. She wonders if you're talking to someone else, if you've moved on, if you finally decided you deserve better. And the more she thinks about it, the harder it becomes to stop. That's the paradox of silence. By saying nothing, you make her mind say everything. You make her imagination do the work. And often the imagination paints a far more powerful picture than reality ever could. This is where the obsession starts to creep in. She might open your old conversations just to see how you used to talk to her. She might replay memories in her head of things you did together. She might even convince herself that she didn't appreciate those moments enough while she had them. The very silence that seemed cold at first now becomes magnetic. Instead of chasing her, you've reversed the roles. She's the one searching for answers. She's the one giving you mental space rent free in her thoughts. But here's the key. It only works when your silence comes from strength, not from games or manipulation. If you stop talking to her but then secretly sit by the phone waiting, hoping, and desperate, she'll feel that energy. Women can sense when your silence is weak and rooted in insecurity, but when your silence is strong, when it comes from a place of self-respect, of choosing to protect your peace, of knowing your worth, that silence becomes undeniable. It's not empty, it's powerful. It's filled with the quiet confidence that says, I don't need to prove myself. I don't need to beg for attention. I know who I am and I know what I bring to the table. That is why curiosity turns into obsession, because silence backed by strength is irresistible. It's not about ignoring her forever. It's about showing without words that you will not chase, you will not beg, and you will not hand over your energy to someone who doesn't appreciate it. When you stop talking, you start communicating in a different language, the language of self-respect. And believe me, that's a language every woman understands. And that is the first step to making her realize just what your absence truly means. When you stop talking to a woman, what begins to surface after curiosity is a deeper realization, your value. You see, as long as you were the one always initiating, always giving attention, always making sure the connection stayed alive, she didn't have to think about what you were worth. She didn't have to evaluate what role you truly played in her life, because your presence was constant and guaranteed. But the moment you take that away, something powerful begins to shift inside her. She begins to realize that the consistency she once overlooked is now gone, and that gap forces her to reconsider everything. At first, she might try to distract herself. She'll tell herself that she doesn't care, that your silence doesn't matter. She may even put on a show for others, laughing, smiling, and posting on social media as if nothing has changed. But inside, the contrast is undeniable. Where once there was a steady stream of energy, attention, and presence from you, there's now only silence. And that silence shines a light on the truth she didn't want to see before. You were adding value to her life in ways she had taken for granted. This is the irony of human behavior. People often fail to recognize value when it's readily available, when it comes easily, when it never seems to run out. But when something stops, when something is no longer offered freely, that's when appreciation kicks in. It's the same way people realize the importance of air only when they're gasping for breath, or the importance of water when they're desperately thirsty. By stepping back, you force her to see the reality of what your presence meant. She begins to understand that not every man will invest, not every man will show care, and not every man will offer consistency. And that's when she starts to see you differently. The longer your silence continues, the deeper this realization becomes. She begins to think about the little things you did, the way you made her laugh, the way you supported her, the way you checked in on her, the way you made her feel secure without her even realizing it at the time. What she once brushed off as ordinary now starts to feel rare. What she once dismissed as just who you are now becomes a reminder that not every man possesses those qualities. That's when she starts to reevaluate her behavior. Did she take you for granted? Did she disrespect you in ways she shouldn't have? Did she fail to give back what you were giving? These questions start to creep into her mind, and with every day of silence, the weight of those questions grows heavier. And here's where the real power lies. When you stop talking, you're not just withholding words, you're withholding energy. You're withholding validation. You're withholding the comfort she once relied on. That absence is felt on a deep emotional level. It forces her to confront the truth that maybe she miscalculated, maybe she underestimated your worth. Maybe she believed that you would always be there no matter how she treated you. But now, with the silence echoing louder than any argument or explanation, she has no choice but to face the fact that you're not a man who sticks around when he isn't valued. This realization is what begins to crush her ego, because for a woman to recognize that she misjudged your value is a blow to the pride she once held when she thought she could do better, when she thought you'd always be waiting. She now sees that you are not just another option, not just another man giving attention. Your silence has made it clear that you are a man with standards, with boundaries, with self-respect. That realization hits harder than any words could. So while curiosity gets her attention, it's the recognition of your value that keeps her thoughts spinning. She begins to understand that losing your voice, your presence, and your energy wasn't just about losing communication. It was about losing a man who brought real substance to her life. And that awareness is something she cannot ignore. And that is how silence transforms from being empty space into undeniable proof of your worth. When you stop talking to a woman, something very interesting happens. Beyond her initial curiosity and her eventual recognition of your value, her imagination begins to take over. And this is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. You see, when you're silent, she no longer has access to your thoughts, your emotions, or your intentions. She doesn't know what you're doing, who you're talking to, or where your attention is going. That uncertainty creates a space in her mind, and human nature being what it is, that space doesn't stay empty. It gets filled with assumptions, projections, and fears. In short, she starts overthinking. The mind hates a void. When there's no communication, no clarity, the brain rushes to fill in the blanks. At first, she may try to convince herself that you're just busy, that you'll reach out eventually, that nothing has really changed. But as time goes on and you remain silent, those comforting stories start to fade. In their place, doubt begins to creep in. She starts asking herself questions she doesn't really want to answer. Why hasn't he called? Is he upset with me? Is he losing interest? Did he meet someone else? And the longer she sits with these questions, the more intense they become. This is where your silence does what words could never achieve. If you were to chase, explain, or justify, she would have no reason to doubt, no reason to worry, no reason to feel the possibility of losing you. But by doing nothing, by simply stepping back, you trigger her imagination. She begins to picture scenarios. Maybe you're going out with friends and not even thinking about her. Maybe you're enjoying life without her. Maybe another woman is capturing your attention. And whether or not any of that is true doesn't matter. What matters is that her mind is running wild with the possibilities. And each possibility makes her realize something deeper. She does not have control over you. Control is what so many women unconsciously seek in relationships. When they know a man will always be there, always respond, always forgive, they feel secure, not in love, but in dominance. But when you go silent, that control evaporates. She can't predict you, she can't manipulate the outcome, she can't guarantee your presence. And that loss of control sparks anxiety, even panic. Because suddenly she's no longer the one in charge of the dynamic. You flip the script without saying a single word. Her overthinking doesn't stop at the fear of losing you, it also makes her reflect on herself. She starts wondering if she did something wrong, if she pushed too hard, if she disrespected you one too many times. That reflection, painful as it may be for her ego, forces her to see her own behavior in a new light. She replays conversations in her head, she recalls moments where she dismissed your effort, and she starts to realize that maybe, just maybe, she caused the silence. That self-reflection is powerful because it shifts the blame inward rather than outward. Instead of pointing the finger at you, she begins to look at her own choices. And let's not overlook the emotional intensity that comes from this process. When you were always available, you may have been a source of comfort, but comfort rarely creates attraction. Mystery and uncertainty, on the other hand, fuel desire. By not giving her answers, by not reassuring her, by not allowing her to control the narrative, you've made yourself a puzzle she desperately wants to solve. That desire to figure you out becomes a pull, drawing her back toward you with far more intensity than any words or actions could ever produce. So while silence may look like doing nothing, in reality, it is doing everything. It's activating her imagination, fueling her doubts, challenging her ego, and reigniting her attraction. She can't help but wonder, she can't help but replay, and she can't help but feel that urge to reach out just to regain some sense of certainty. That's the power of letting her overthink. It makes her feel your absence more strongly than your presence ever could. And that is why silence becomes the loudest message you could ever send. And eventually, when you stop talking to a woman, after her curiosity, after her attempts to test your resolve, and after her mind has spiraled into overthinking, something deeper begins to take root. She starts to genuinely miss you. And this feeling is not the surface level kind of missing someone, like remembering a casual acquaintance. It's the kind of longing that comes when absence creates a vacuum that she cannot easily fill. Human beings often don't realize the full weight of someone's presence until it's gone, and women are no exception to this truth. When you remove your voice, your attention, and your presence, you create that void. And the longer it lasts, the stronger her sense of missing you becomes. In the beginning, she may try to dismiss it. She might distract herself with friends, social media, or even other men. She might tell herself she's fine without you, that she's moving on, that she doesn't need your energy in her life. But no matter how much she tries to convince herself, the silence keeps echoing in the background. That lack of communication becomes noticeable not only in her daily routines, but also in the subtle moments. The times she would usually share a funny thought with you, the times she'd expect a good morning or good night message, the times she'd want validation or reassurance. Without those interactions, a space opens up, and that space starts to hurt. You see, missing someone isn't about logic, it's about emotion. Logically, she may list all the reasons she doesn't need you, but emotionally, her heart reminds her of the experiences, the moments, the feelings that only you brought into her life. Silence forces her to confront those emotions in a raw, unfiltered way. She starts to recall the way you made her laugh, the way you carried yourself with confidence, the way your presence added something unique to her world. These memories don't fade with silence. They grow stronger because the mind often romanticizes what it no longer has. This is where your absence transforms into presence. Ironically, by not being there, you are more present in her thoughts than ever before. Every time she feels the itch to text you and realizes she can't, every time she wants to hear your voice and is met with silence, every time she scrolls through her phone hoping to see your name pop up, she is reminded of what's missing, and that reminder triggers longing, a yearning that no distraction can fully erase. Now, this longing doesn't just affect her emotions, it affects her ego. For a woman who thought she could always count on you to chase, to explain, to check in, your silence becomes a mirror. She sees that she doesn't have the grip on you that she once believed she did. That realization can sting, but it also amplifies her desire to pull you back in. People want what they can't easily have, and when you remove yourself, you become that unattainable source of fulfillment. The very absence she thought she wanted transforms into the presence she desperately craves. And here's where the shift happens. Missing you starts to outweigh her pride. At first, her ego may resist. She may try to stay strong to prove to herself that she doesn't care. But as days or weeks pass, that pride begins to crack under the weight of emotion. Missing you becomes undeniable. And when that happens, the same woman who may have disrespected you, ignored you, or taken you for granted suddenly feels the need to reconnect, to reach out, to restore what was lost. That's the beauty of silence. It doesn't just create distance, it creates value. By stepping back, you allow her to feel your absence fully, and in doing so, you remind her of your importance. She realizes that your presence was never guaranteed, that your energy was never replaceable, and that losing your voice leaves a silence too loud to ignore. And that is when missing you becomes the most powerful message you never had to send.